The most common case that we see, of course, is going to be a rear-end accident that happens on 280 or Highway 101, something like that, with commuter traffic, and there's a bumper-to-bumper type of an accident. That's probably the most common. Let me give you an example of a case a little bit more interesting than that, just to kind of use as a vehicle to discuss these different things. A gentleman on his way home, 50-year-old gentleman, just done with work for the day, thinking about getting home to his wife and kids, driving along on the freeway at freeway speeds, and another vehicle, not paying attention, tries to change lanes. As he changes lanes, hits the driver's side rear portion, sending my client's car into a spin, clockwise spin. He ended up hitting another car. He goes off into the shoulder. In that situation, emergency personnel, ambulance is called, police are called to the scene. And once he's taken to the hospital. Once he's out of the hospital, now he has to face, what are the issues that I need to deal with here? Fortunately, there is a police report that comes out of that type of case. And the police report will have lots of information as to who was involved on the other side, insurance companies and that type of thing. So in that type of situation, I would definitely encourage that person to call an attorney to get assistance, because there's just a lot of things they need to take care of. The person involved is not sophisticated in what happens in a car accident. They don't know what the rights are, and so it's not a great idea for them to be talking to the insurance company for the person that caused the accident, because the insurance company will call them. They have a kind of a first strike mentality, so they want to get in there right away, take a recorded statement from the person. That means they're going to be on the phone, they're going to be recording everything that's said, and the person is not really in the right frame of mind to be doing that. And they don't know what should be said and what shouldn't be said, and so it's a good idea to simply just decline that. You don't have to give that statement. That's the first thing. Getting the police report would be the next thing. And also contacting your own insurance company. Your own insurance company can be very good at dealing with property damage and providing you with medical insurance if you have that coverage. So those are the main things to start out with. Yes, I would, because you actually have to do that. There's something called the cooperation clause in your own policy that requires you to do that, and that's okay. There's no problem with doing that. Well, you actually could say that you want to get legal advice first. You could have your attorney present when you give the statement, but it's okay to give that statement. Okay. The other thing you want to talk to your own company about is photographs. Okay. They're often the best source of getting photographs of the vehicle. And photographs of the vehicle damage is very, very important. It's important for a couple of things. Reason number one would be to determine how the accident happened. We learn a lot by the property damage, where it's located, to figure out how the accident happened. Number two is to show impact. If it's a large damage, it indicates a bigger impact and more serious injury, perhaps. Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. If you're at all unsure or feeling a little uneasy, then it's certainly a good idea to get an attorney to talk to about that. Sometimes that is an issue with coverage, because you may lend your car to somebody else. Exactly. You may give it to a son or daughter. Someone might be excluded from the policy. There's a lot of issues like that can come up. Well, we operate in a little different way than most attorneys in other areas of law, because we don't work on an hourly basis. We work on what's called a contingency basis. So that means that if you're not working, you have no money, you can't afford an attorney, you can always get an attorney that will accept your case and then get paid at the end of the case on a percentage basis. I generally like to help people with all size cases, and if it's really too small, I will help them go to small claims court, because a lot of times insurance companies will not be very cooperative when it comes to the small cases, and they will offer money that is really not an appropriate amount to compensate someone that's been in an accident, even a small accident. So small claims court is available. It's very easy. I help my clients prepare for that, fill out the forms. They go there. The insurance company can't get up and talk, only the person involved in the case. And they can present their case to a judge, and they can usually get a fair result that way. So there's always avenues. Well, that's an area of the law we call products liability, and there are so many things in a modern car, computers, restraint systems, the airbags, seat belts, so many things that can cause an injury because of a malfunction. Yeah, if the brakes don't work, the steering doesn't work, or something of that nature. So there's two different areas that we talk about there. One could be in reference to a mechanic. I've had cases where a mechanic has worked on a car, forgot to tighten down a lug bolt or something of that nature. Person starts driving away, the tire falls off, and as if there really is a defect in the manufacturing of the vehicle or the design of the vehicle. So if you have a seat belt, I actually had a case where what we call a three-point restraint, which means the seat belt comes around and it locks in here, and it has a lap and a shoulder portion to it. And there's a little button that it sticks into. Mm-hmm. At this time, the little button had a surface area that was open, so it became dislodged during the accident. Someone just hit it with their elbow, when in fact, really, it was dislodged because of the open surface area. So after that, the car manufacturer redesigned the button so that it was partially covered on four sides. So it had to be hit just with a finger to dislodge. So it couldn't become accidentally dislodged. So that's an example of a defect. That's really an area that isn't well handled, I think, by some counsel. Some attorneys, I think, want to shy away from that because it's a little bit of a touchy-feely kind of a subject, and it's a little more difficult to deal with. But I think it's just as important. Some car accidents like the one I described, where a person's spinning in the roadway, is worried that they're going to get hit by another car and die. I mean, it's a real impact. And some people suffer what's called a traumatic injury, emotional traumatic injury from that. And that can cause them to have nightmares, it can cause them to become withdrawn, to have flashbacks, to be depressed. There's a lot of things that can happen in a serious accident. Mm-hmm. So that really is an issue that needs to be looked at. Oftentimes people don't realize that they have that. Loss of consortium, yes. Okay. It is beyond the scope of just marital relations, though, because what it means really is the loss of one's services. So in other words, in a married couple today where the husband works, the wife works, everybody has to do their share, and one of them now cannot. So the other person has to pick up the slack. Right, that's part of what we call economic damages. So there's non-economic and economic. Non-economic being pain, suffering, loss of consortium, things like that. The economic damage is whatever you lose because you are not able to work due to injuries. You could be with a terrible, terrible back. You just cannot even get out of bed in the morning. So you're not going to be able to sit at your desk. You're not going to be able to work on the computer. You're not going to be able to dig ditches. You're not going to be able to teach in your classroom, whatever the work might be. And that, by the way, that can go into the future too if you're going to have a surgery or something of that nature. There's the local issue of how we deal with one particular case with one insurance company, and there's the bigger picture of what is the insurance company doing politically with all the money that they make, and are they losing money on the real estate, and that's why they're being tougher to settle claims. I mean, there's a lot of issues like that, but looking at it just case by case, which is what people care about, yes, generally they are more difficult, and you have to document a file very well. You have to cross the T's, dot the I's. You have to have papers from the doctors. You have to have the photographs. You have to have the police report. You have to be well documented and present your case factually to the insurance company to obtain the best result. And that's really why a lawyer is important in these kinds of cases. I have been president of the Santa Clara County Trial Lawyers Association. I'm still on the board of directors of that organization, and we promote, it's an organization for plaintiff lawyers. We share ideas and help each other. I have been very active in the legal community for over 25 years. I went to Santa Clara University, so I'm local from this area. Although I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and went to school back in New York State, but I came out here for law school, and I never want to go back. I think I probably spend a lot more time with clients than a lot of lawyers do. I don't like to have a sort of assembly line law. I like to be individualized. I spend a lot of time. I try to understand the case. I understand the problems that my clients are having right then and there. People are always amazed because when they come to see me, sometimes I'll pick up the phone right away and I'll make a call on their case. And they think, oh, he's working on it. That's great. And that's the way I am. I'm kind of more of a take charge person. Probably about 95% of all cases are settled with insurance companies. So 5% only are getting tried. Why are those 5% getting tried? Because there's a big difference between where the insurance company is and where the client is in terms of what they think the case is worth. And that gap just can't be filled in. So therefore we go to trial, we go to a jury, and the jury decides that question. But in the cases that are decided by settlement, it's because we were able to marshal the evidence. That is, what are the economic losses? And also past, present, and future, what is going to happen to this person?
Earnings.
In terms of earnings and also in terms of their condition, their medical condition. They may have a condition which will be for the rest of their lives. They may have a condition that's going to need a surgery, but they don't have the money to pay for surgery, so it's part of the future consideration. So marshaling all of this evidence and documentation together, presenting it, and understanding what cases are worth in this community. One thing I do tell my clients in trying to understand this is, you don't go to the grocery store and buy a carton of milk for $10. It's not worth it. Yeah. So you have to find that right value. And that's where a case will settle. And I think in the past that's been true, but I think it depends on how you present the case, and it depends on the person involved. And if the person really is a credible, deserving person, I think the jury's going to see that. It's a very good question, and that does happen sometimes. And I think it comes from just not having the experience in dealing with what cases are worth. And I will sit down with the client. I'll spend the time to go through how do we come up with a value in the case. And if we go through it and the client understands the criteria for determining that, then I think they usually will accept my view of it. If we file in court, it's going to take at least a year. But what happens is that there's two phases to the case. So there's the first phase where we're dealing with an insurance company, and we might get a negotiation going with the insurance company. And I say to the client, well, here's the number. Do we like this number? If they say, I don't like this number, I'll say, well, okay, we don't have to settle. We go to the next stage, which is court. Now it's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to cost more money. And so we try to figure out whether it's worthwhile to proceed. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Well, the most important thing, clients talk about, well, the attorney isn't returning phone calls. It's a two-way street. I want the client to contact me too. I need them to keep me updated on their medical condition. If they change addresses, sometimes they change and they don't tell me. So to stay in constant contact and communication is the most important thing. In my office, I send copies of letters of everything I do to the client, so they know exactly what's going on. When I first see a client, I set up what's called a 90-day appointment. So I will see that client back in 90 days no matter what. A little bit like what doctors do. They say, yeah, come back and see me.